Okay, good morning. I think we'll go ahead and start the meeting. Joyce, if you do the roll call, please.
Dave Talley,
Here.
Mark Bymaster, Alyssa Dobbin,
Here.
Michael Dixon, Darina Bowerman, Leandre Camel,
Here.
Frank Barbieri.
Here.
We have quorum.
We got the whole group here this morning. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Okay, then we'll do introductions. Patricia, we'll start with you as always, please.
Good morning. Patricia Morales from the Office of General Counsel.
Heather Frederick, Chief Financial Officer. Alyssa Dobbin, Audit Committee.
Joseph Sanchez, Chief Operating Officer.
Diana Garza, Supervisor of Audit.
Before we get to you, we'll take the people in the back, please.
Good morning, Dave Dolan, Chief of Facilities Management.
Okay, now you're up, Bob.
Bob Bliss, Office of Inspector General.
Randy Law, Inspector General's Office.
Tracy Shear, Inspector General's Office.
Dave Talley, Audit Committee.
Teresa Michael, Inspector General.
Carrie High, Counsel to Inspector General.
Joyce Edison, Executive Assistant to the IG.
Christina Daniels, Inspector General's Office.
Frank Barbieri, Audit.
Michael Dixon, Audit Committee.
Leandre Camel, Audit Committee.
Mark Bymaster, Audit Committee.
Darina Bowerman, Audit Committee.
Brett Friedman, Partner, RSM.
And who do we have online?
Gloria Brandt, School Board Member.
Allison Castellano, Principal of Spanish River.
Asha Berg, Chief Operating Office.
Is there an agenda in here today?
Okay, guess that's it.
Well, also, Rob Broline, partner with Carriggs and Ingram.
All right.
And Holly Hahn, Office of the General Counsel.
Great. Are there any others? If not, welcome. I'll accept a motion. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
Okay, I'll accept a motion.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. For the agenda, are we going to comment at all on the communication from Monday to bring us up to date other than what was emailed to us? Just a comment?
Yes, I will.
Yes.
But, okay, where is that on here?
It'll be under the IG comments, yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll approve the agenda. I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Passes 7-0. Take a minute, if you will, and review the minutes of the September 19th meeting, and after you've had a chance to review it, I'll accept the motion and a second to approve.
Leandre offered that motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 7-0. Public comments? Hearing none, we'll move to the Inspector General report. Terry?
Good morning. Before I start, I do want to introduce our newest IG employee. We have a new audit supervisor, Diana Garza. We'd like to welcome her. Diana's a CPA, so we have a CPA now on staff. She has over 20 years working with the AG's office, and she was, I believe, a supervisor over at the AG's office. And as we all know, the Auditor General's office produces some excellent auditors. And working, I think, 2 years, or is it 2 years here at the school district? We kind of stole her from Ms. Fredericks, and I apologize very, very much for that, but she's good. So, but we'd like to welcome her, and if you'd like to say a few words, I don't want to put you on the spot too much. She's looking at me like, really, my first day?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Over the, we've been working on a lot of policies within the IG's office that I think the whole school district is updating their policies. And as the policies go through the different processes, you know, we bring it here, it goes to workshop, and then it goes to the board. And then I believe it comes back two or three times to the board for actual votes. The audit committee policy was pulled, not the last meeting, the previous one, with some questions about the jurisdiction or scope of the audit committee and where we fell. And I wanted to make sure and to reassure the audit committee that the recommendations and the issues that we've brought forward are in line with what IGs do, and they're also in line with what auditors do. And to make sure that I addressed everything, and I did it very concisely, I went to YouTube, had YouTube do a transcript of the discussion. I then took that transcript, plugged it into ChatGPT, which is my new best friend. If it was in college, my grades would have improved a lot better. And asked general questions about, are we stepping out of bounds? Are we doing overreach? Are we reaching into areas that we shouldn't be? And are, basically getting a second opinion on the things that we proposed. And ChatGPT did an excellent job, as it always does, and went through and stated that the changes that we are putting in about unrestricted access to records, about looking at safety and security, or the issues, I believe there was another one on immediate access to different information, was all in line with not only the Association of Inspector General, Florida statutes, the Florida Department of Education requirements, as well as the Government Accounting and Auditability, Government Accounting Office requirements. And they gave all the links, and they gave an overview of that we're in line. So I just wanted to reassure everybody I'm not trying to step out of line. I'm definitely not trying to put the audit committee in any type of a position. The access to records that we were requesting is strictly for my staff. It's not for anybody here. The people here don't direct or do audits or investigations. One of the reasons why we use the word OIG staff and not auditors, investigators is because, number one, we have different people with different titles. I have intake people that need records. I've got contract review specialists that need records. So to put down every single title, and when titles change quite often, we would be changing our policy all the time. But I want to, if anybody has any questions or any concerns that I am trying to move the audit committee or trying to give you all bad advice. I mean, I've been doing this for 29 years. I do make mistakes, but I am familiar with what IGs do. And if you have any questions or any concerns, I just want you to please ask me.
I don't have concerns about what is the context of what we're talking about. It was pulled?
Yes,
It
sir.
was pulled?
Yes.
2 board meetings ago?
Yes.
Was it brought back with an explanation? How's that work? How procedurally, help me understand.
So there was some concerns about it. So it was pulled from the consent agenda. It was discussed. It was voted on, and it passed 6-1 in favor. So it goes to the next reading. It could be pulled again. I don't know. So I don't know if it's not finalized until it's adopted. But I just wanted to reassure.
Thank you.
Michael, I'd like to ask Ms. Branch a question. I listened to that former meeting, and it appears you have concerns about the jurisdiction of the audit committee. And I'd like for you to share with the committee briefly what your concerns, if any, you have about the audit committee in terms of what we are or are not doing.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. I got my questions answered, but as far as really security of why IG would be over that was my question. And it seems like, in talking with a lot of people, that the IG was trying to not really overstep the boundaries, but why would they have security in that policy?
Well, I think Kerry answered those questions, did he not?
Yes, but I still don't agree with it being in the policy, so that's why I voted against it.
But specifically, I'm asking now about our committee. You seem to think that we might have overstepped our boundaries somehow, and I'd just like to have you share with the committee what you think we are doing or not doing that we shouldn't be. I'm just a little disturbed.
For me, I look at it as fraud, waste, and an investigation, so it's hard for me to understand why security would be in there.
All right, fine, okay, whatever. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Move on.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Leandre here, one question. You say it goes from a procedural space. It goes for one vote and then it comes back? So how does it?
Basically, we have one more reading. There's two readings.
Two readings, okay.
Yeah, two readings. So we made it through the first reading. There's a second reading coming up. I believe it's November the 5th. It might be November 19th. One of the two. We have 4 different policies.
But it's going to be on consent?
Yes.
And is there any reason that it'll come off this time now that all questions have been answered?
I can't speak to that. I won't know until the vote is held, but the board members have the discretion, as well as the superintendent, to remove items if they...
But as of right now, you don't see an issue with it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Terry?
All right, that's it for me. I do want to thank everybody for being here. I think this is a packed crowd, and hopefully we'll keep everything moving for you because I know all of your time is very important. But thank you all for taking the time to be here.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Moving right along, we'll go to item 5, the audit of the transportation services for ESE students. Who's going to present that?
This is Aida. She's the auditor for
Aida,
this
thank you.
project.
You need to use a microphone.
Good morning, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to review the audit of transportation services for special needs students. Basically, the background of this audit is School Board Policy 2.23, and it basically states that students with disabilities are eligible for district transportation services. Students must have an IEP plan on file and be identified as having a disability within Section 504 and transportation services. These specific statistics, we received this information from Transportation Services and also the profile on Florida DOE. So it basically says the number of students that are transported on a whole, the ESE students, and then also we broke it down further for the 2 vendors that we have the district has contracted for those services. So the important part here is because this is an audit of a contract, we're going to focus on the Ever-Driven and the Med-Aid down at the bottom and the number of students they are transporting. So if we look at FY21, there was just a few, 39 and 25, for a total of 64 students transported to FY24, which is now 473 students that were transported under this contract. Okay, the purchase contract, number 21C 13A, it was signed in October 2020. The contract was for 3 years with 2 additional years of extension. The objective of this audit was student safety requirements and billing accuracy. The first conclusion that I have is 12 employees of the 2 vendors did not have the required satisfactory background screening. What that looks like is the district does a background screening and they are provided with a identification badge that they should be wearing when they are on any of the district campuses and transporting students. So one of the drivers, she was actively driving during the on-site observation. She had a felony record on file, and then 2 other drivers did not have the background screening at all. Then when we went to review the attendants, which are the vendor employees that are actually sitting with the students in the back of the vehicles, 9 of them could not be identified, either by their name or their social security number. The OIG went out, it was a collective effort, and we went out to 12 schools on November 12th. And then 4 months later, we went out to 11 schools, and we sampled the drivers of this contracted services. So if you look at the chart, for EverDriven is one of the companies, MedAid is the other company, and these are the numbers of students they were transporting during the 2 on-site observations. Okay, so the conclusions for the first observation showed that 17% of the vendor employees did not have a vendor identification badge. So that means that they were driving students and they could not produce their badge. And we also broke it down by each specific company, but for a total of 9 employees. Then we also found that 52% of EverDriven, specifically, employees were unable to communicate fluently in English. That is actually one of the requirements of the contract, and based on our observation during that particular visit, they were not able to communicate effectively. Another area we tested was whether they were dressed in a logoed uniform that as required by the contract. And we found that 28 of the employees were, 28%, excuse me, 28% of the 53 employees that we tested were not in a logoed uniform. Okay, this is basically a summary of our on-site observations, and let me just go here. So it basically covers all of the things, all the different areas of the observation. And if you need any further details on that, you can find that on page 8 in the draft report. So moving on to conclusion 3, we noticed that we tested 34 sample students to determine if they had an IEP plan on file, and did the IEP plan state that these students needed to have contracted services for transportation. And we did find one that it was not noted in the file, and we followed up with the department, and we just noted it as a conclusion to remind them to make sure that that needs to be documented in the student's record. Conclusion 4, we noticed that there was an increase in bus drivers without the corresponding decrease in student transported by the vendors. So if you go down, this table shows the number of school bus drivers. So we have a total of, let's say for FY22, a total of 681 positions, and there was a vacancy of 225 bus driver positions. When we got over to FY25, that number decreased significantly to only 82 open positions. However, when we look at the dollar values of the transportation services, it increased, not decreased. So if you follow me with FY22, there were 225 open positions, and we can see that 120 students were transported by the vendors for a total of $4,052,074. That was the cost of the services. And when we get over to FY24, we see that there is 473 students being transported for a total of $13,710,926. However, we see that the vacant positions have decreased. Conclusion number 5 shows that there was 180,000 no-show canceled trip fees. We did a sample of just 3 months of invoicing from January, September, and November of 2024. And that showed 46,158 student trips. 4% of those trips, which equal 2,016, were for no-shows or canceled trips. Therefore, the no-shows accounted for, in dollars, 180,106, which is for almost 5% of the total. So I'm going to say that just one more time because it's a lot of numbers there. We reviewed 3 months of services for the trips, so both the vendors, for a total of 46,158 student trips. And with that, 2,016 of the trips were canceled or no-shows. What that looks like is that the drivers went out to the location and there wasn't a student to be picked up and transported to their campus. Okay. I also want to add that MedAid, when there is a no-show, they bill the district for 50% of the cost of the trip. EverDriven bills 100%, which is the full price of the trip for a no-show or a cancel. So the 50% and the 100% is how we are seeing that it can cost $180,000 just for 3 months of no-shows. Okay. We also discovered that there was one particular invoice. The company MedAid bills in a PDF format, not like an electronic Excel format. So we calculated each particular invoice, and that invoice displayed 2 payments for $4,960 in overpayments. Okay, conclusion number 6 is to do with the capital maintenance funds are being used to fund transportation services. And as you can see, for the 2 vendors in this particular contract that we audited, in FY 2020, it was almost $2 million worth of capital maintenance funds being used to transport the students. And by FY 2024, it's almost $14 million of capital maintenance funds being used to transport the students, which is a huge increase as well. Okay. For conclusion 6, we also want to note that Florida statute states that there are some stipulations to be able to use the capital maintenance funds for such transportation services. And when we looked at the statute, the district didn't meet all 4 components of this section to be able to use the capital maintenance funds. Okay, so do we have any questions?
Any questions? Comments?
You started.
Mark?
Sorry, I don't have a mic. The vendors, are they using their own vehicles or are they using the district's vehicles?
They are using their own vehicles.
Okay. And then the large increase that happened starting, was it in 23? Just what was the main cause of the large increase in cost? They were just transporting more students.
Okay, so we have the department here today, if maybe they can discuss the large increase in use.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's aware that there's still a national shortage of bus drivers. So That's the primary reason, because there's a lack of bus drivers and we had to move some students to private transportation.
Okay, so those years, there was just more of you didn't have the in-house to do the transportation, so it was subbed out to the vendors.
Right.
Okay. That's all I have.
Hey, any other questions or comments?
I have one or two. We've done how did this come to the light of the IG's office? What caused this, you to look into this one?
Okay, so I believe a complaint came through the investigations department about one of the vendors and the services that were provided. And that was one part of it. And when we started looking into the complaint, there were some other things to consider. Also, for safety measures, we wanted to ensure that we were auditing some of the safety concerns of the district.
Okay, thank you. Just two more. In the contract, is the contract for personnel costs and operation costs with each of the companies, Everdriven and Med-Aid? Is it so? Because I'm really trying to boil it down to what is the per student cost, or is there cost savings from using internal versus external for transportation purposes?
I mean, I can speak to it from a financial perspective. Mr. Sanchez can speak to it from an operational perspective. It is never going to be eliminated. I mean, so we have to understand that. We have students that are so medically fragile that they're transported to school in a medical bed. You know, so that's never going to go away. I know because of our staffing challenges, that was also compounded because of the pandemic. There were just significant challenges during that time period that contracted transportation was the only option that we had in order to get the students to school, you know, which is a state mandate. So it does, there is a premium, it does cost more, but we did have such a savings within the lapse with our vacant positions. And when you look at the numbers that were provided, it goes back to 2022, I believe, but you really have to go back pre-pandemic to see what our staffing was prior to that. And I do have a pretty long, you know, I like short responses. This is one of my longest responses I think I've had in an audit report, because I felt like it really needed to have an explanation as to how we got where we are. And that transportation is working very hard in order to, because it is very complex, to now shift as many students as they can back to regular yellow bus transportation. But it's not an easy process, and it's not something that can be done just over several months. And so that, we've had enough money within the lap salary, which also includes overtime as well, in order to cover that overage that we've been paying for the contracted transportation. And then Mr. Sanchez can speak to the operational challenges.
I think you covered 99% of it. So, but yeah, you're right. It's complicated. Put it that way. To try to. What we try to do is maximize the number of students on the regular yellow buses, right? So most yellow buses can hold, 77 kids, 80 kids, right, depending on how big the kids are. So you want to, so the optimal way of maximizing the utilization of those buses is put as many general education students on those buses as possible, and then allowing the private transportation companies to handle the one or twos, the individual ones. And it's not just ESC, it's also, we have a number of McKinley-Vento, homeless students, and foster students as well. So they're also transporting those students. And some of them can live in Boca and go to school in Jupiter because they have the right to go to whatever schools that they were originally going to, despite where they're currently living. So like I said, it's a complicated formula trying to maximize and make it most efficient.
Thank you. The other question is, your bus drivers increase, and it's more contract management. And I guess my question is more to that. How is that handled internally from the school board side with the contract management watching those numbers. So is someone watching that so it won't get out of hand? Because it appears that some things just kind of like got through the crack.
Yes, I mean, we, from the finance division, we monitor and probably more than Mr. Searchwell appreciates, because he's dealing with the operational challenges and he has to make sure that these students get to school. We need to ensure that we have enough funds. So what my department was always making sure is that we had enough within our lab salary in order to cover the additional costs that we were seeing within the contracted transportation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Allison, did you have a question?
I was just wondering, my issue was the amount of waste when there was a no-show. And I was just wondering if the district would look at trying to speak to that other vendor and see if they too would allow just the 50% cancellation fee type, knowing that they went to pick the child up. The child wasn't there. Obviously, sometimes kids are sick or they're not able to be picked up, which is understandable. They've already paid that person to work that day. But I'm just wondering if there's any work that could be done to try to get the Evergreen company to agree to that. If not, 50%, at least 75 to do some kind of cost savings in that area. I know that it's probably limited with vendors that do private transportation as well. That I don't like to see that kind of waste, which I'm sure all of you are on board with that.
Yeah, so I can answer that as well. These contracts are actually coming up for renewal. So we're going through the RFP currently. And then with our existing vendors, you can see with a lot of these findings, they're unfortunately somewhat out of the district's control because we're not the ones who are directing the drivers. So that's why I had to work with legal to say, what can we do to hold these vendors accountable? So we are bringing them in and we're requiring the vendors to create a corrective action plan as to how they're going to ensure that they're going to comply with all the contract requirements, because everything, all of the findings that were identified are requirements within their current contract, so that we can determine what we can do from an oversight perspective to ensure that they are in compliance on a daily basis with the contract.
I was speaking not as much, Ms. Frederick, to the compliance issues, more so
But I was
to-
saying that we're going to renegotiate the contract, so
Okay,
we'll be
yeah.
able to incorporate that when we renegotiate.
Mr. Dixon.
Heather, let me respond for a minute or ask you a question. All the findings in this report, and I think it was well done. Thanks for the presentation. It was easy to follow you instead of reading everything in the book. It was very helpful. Thank you. All these issues that came up here in this report are in the contract, and they were not abiding by the contract. Is that what we're finding out right now?
Correct.
All right, number one. Okay, I think for safety, I'll talk about the safety of the students here, which nobody's commenting on. You got a felon, you have people that can't speak English, you have people with no identification in our files. What does the transportation department do with respect to monitoring our contract with all these violations? How could this have happened for 4 years?
And that's,
I mean, how could that have happened?
So we do have supervisors who are going to be more vigilant about making sure we're doing the same thing. I think IG's office did a good job of going to the schools and making sure that they check in them. So we're going to be doing more of that. That's part of our response as well as the quite frankly, there's no excuse for it. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So we're gonna hold them accountable. And now there's this whole private transportation world has kind of dramatically changed since COVID, and there's a lot more competition out there now. And if firms don't do what they say they're going to do, we're going to be replacing them. So.
Yeah, I just find this not very good feeling. I mean, these are the most vulnerable students in the district, and what they're being provided, and I mean, it's just dangerous. It's dangerous. So the negotiation will find out all these remedies that we're talking about now, and then we'll be,
Well, we're not waiting for the renegotiation of the contract. We're bringing the vendor in now to create a corrective action plan to say how they're going to ensure that they can comply with the current contract
with the
requirements.
identity, the
Correct,
felonies.
to ensure that every driver is background
Thank you.
checked prior
Thanks.
to.
That's what I would think.
Prior to transporting a student. But we need to work with the vendor because the vendor is the one who is actually directing the drivers.
Thank you.
So that's why I engaged legal to say, what can we do? Because we're not the ones directing the drivers. That's why the ultimate correction to this is to, or the ultimate fix is to move as many students back to yellow bus as possible because we have control over those drivers.
Thank you.
Are we able to, Mr. Chair, are we able to ask if they're not they can't meet compliance, can you term the agreement and have someone in place to continue transporting those students? Because I heard Mr. Sanchez say that there's competition out there now. So is there room within piggybacking or bylaws that we could actually give some recommendation as an audit committee that if one of these, they can't come into compliance, the staff has opportunity to go back out and make a selection?
I'm not certain how this, what we did with this RFP, but normally what we would do is we would have a pool. And so that way you could pull from multiple vendors. In the past, when we went through this previously, we didn't have that many that were willing to respond. So we were limited with the vendors that responded. So now that there is more competition, I'm hopeful we can have a larger pool of vendors to choose from, so that if there is one where it's found to be a breach, we can terminate and we can move to another vendor.
Oh, all right, let's put the one that charged us the extra, the 100% for the no-show on notice, that we are looking.
Right. One last question, Heather. Who's Mr. Churchwell? Searchwell.
He's the Director of Transportation.
Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, he was at a.
Searchwell.
Yeah, he's returning from a peer review out in New Mexico right now. So he's on a plane heading back here. But
Thank you.
Shortly.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Point of information. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I had a question, but you go first if it's really.
Okay, well, this is just a point of information, if I may, Mr. Chair. We've used the term safety throughout this audit, and I knew this audit was in the hopper at the board meeting a couple weeks ago, but I hope that anyone who's paying attention right now understands that these sort of matters, as Mr. Dixon just pointed out so astutely, background screenings, having felons or people who we haven't screened in contact with vulnerable students, those are all matters of security. And that was exactly why we put that into the policy. We want you all to be able to look at that. Security, as was shared with leadership, I believe, at a meeting about a week ago, it's everyone's responsibility. So that was why it was added. This is a perfect example of something. It's not just limited to school police. It's not just limited to the physical plant. It is things like transporting students. It is IT. So that was why that was there. I couldn't share that 2 weeks ago, but I hope you understand now why security was added.
Yeah. If it's related to this, go ahead, because mine's off topics from the slide.
The one question I have is, this seems like a scenario where you had the environment dramatically changed almost overnight. You almost had the vendors picking up like 300% of the services within the next year. And so is there kind of a plan in place? Because it kind of seems like the internally you couldn't find enough people to provide the services. So then you're subbing it out. And they're probably going, we can't find enough people for these services. So they're probably were violating the compliance just to provide the service. So if it was probably in an environment to where if they were in compliance, there wouldn't have been a driver to pick up these students. So is that kind of looking up like what's the default when to be in compliance, there's not enough drivers to transport the students?
That's why we've worked hard over the time period to increase the pay of bus drivers. So during that time period, the bus drivers did receive a higher increase than others within that bargaining group. I believe it was a 15% increase, I want to say 2 years in a row. So we have been able to stabilize our drivers at this point. I know that they're still continuing to look for drivers, but the number of students that we transported, we never got back to the number of students we transported pre-COVID. So we don't need the same number of drivers that we had pre-COVID. They're realigning, working to realign the routes. And so now that that's somewhat stabilized, that gives them the ability to start to transfer those students back onto regular routes. Is my understanding of what the process they're going to be working on in the upcoming year.
Thank you.
Okay, Alyssa, and then Ms. Branch.
Thank you for bringing up, Michael, what you did about the safety and stuff. I was just curious, and maybe it's just a semantic, it's a slightly different topic, but of just understanding the accounting process, because I see in the vendor overbilling, which is minimal, like it's 5,000 over the amount is great, like kudos to that. But the 100% review of all vendor invoices now prior to payment, like that you now conduct that, and I guess I'm just curious, what is the process? Because I would have thought vendor invoices were reviewed 100% prior to payment anyway. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that on my understanding.
So the review of the invoices of who's receiving the service would be done by the department who's closest to that service. So it is the transportation department. What the transportation department was doing was they were sampling the invoices, and they were not looking at 100% of them. And so that's why the invoices that the auditors happened to select were not the invoices that the department had sampled. And so, so that I informed them, you can't just do a sample, you need to be looking at every invoice. And so now they're changing their process to look at every invoice, review every invoice prior to payment. They have to go in our ERP system, receipt the invoice in. We won't pay the invoice until it's receipted. And so that receipt is them saying that service has been done and performed, or the good has been received.
Okay, Gloria?
Oh, I'm good. I figured it out. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
For a second?
DeAndre, second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 7-0, and Aida, wonderful job. That was a real technical report. You did a great job.
Excellent job, Aida. Really well.
Okay, we'll move on to the internal audit funds. Randy?
This year's internal funds audit is moving smoothly, even though we have a number of new auditors needs to be trained. As of this morning, the auditors have completed another 10 schools compared to last week. So now it's a total of 54 schools field work has been completed, and then the remaining school will continue to be audited. And then again, hopefully we will be completing all the field works by mid-March or something like that. And then the findings are very similar to last year's. No material findings are found so far. They are all common non-compliance with the district procedures.
Okay, any questions or comments? Thank you, Randy. Okay, we'll move on to compliance and quality assurance. Bob?
Okay, thank you. We performed a review of subcontractor default insurance that was purchased by construction managers. One of our prior reviews identified an overbilling of more than $73,000 by a construction manager, for which the district was fully reimbursed. And we engaged this review to determine if this type of overbilling was isolated to one project or involved other projects as well. Our primary objective was to determine whether amounts billed by the construction managers were appropriate and accurate. We selected a sample of 6 construction projects, and those are listed in detail on page 2 of your report. We have 4 major conclusions. Conclusion 1 is that staff do not adequately verify the accuracy of amounts construction managers bill the district for insurance. We noted several instances of this, so we broke this into 2 parts, conclusion 1A and 1B. Conclusion 1A is there were undetected overbillings and overpayments totaling more than $177,000. Shortly after we requested documentation to support amounts that construction managers bill the district, 2 of the construction managers identified overpayments for 2 projects listed on this slide here. And both of the construction managers provided a refund check to the district during our review. We found that current processes do not require construction managers, I'll use the word CM as an abbreviation for construction managers, to provide backup documentation that is necessary for staff to verify the accuracy of the amounts being billed. So staff is unable to verify if the amounts billed to district reflect the CM's actual cost. Conclusion 1B is staff approved payments of approximately $555,000 for one construction manager's deductible liability insurance without obtaining sufficient backup documentation to support the expense. Let me go back. Okay. For 3 projects managed under one of the construction managers' name was Moss and Associates, it took staff, our district staff, more than 6 months to provide us with evidence of the amounts the construction manager paid to their insurance company. We eventually received copies of checks and invoices, but they did not provide us enough detail to allow for reconciliation to the amounts previously billed the district. We noticed that the back of one of the checks that was provided contained 2 endorsements on it for deposit into 2 separate bank accounts. One of those accounts was the construction manager's bank account, the same bank account from which the check was written. A copy of that check is on page 10 of your report. After our discussions with the CM about this unusual endorsement, they provided us with bank statement copies that showed the full amount of the check in question was debited, in fact, from their bank account and deposited by their insurance provider. However, they could not explain how the back of that check became manually endorsed for deposit into their own bank account.
That was Moss?
Correct. What we learned is that that insurance provider is a related party captive insurance company. And as the accountants in the room may know, related party transactions can pose higher risks. We noticed an endorsement on their, from their insurance company for quality control, quality assurance services, as well as for claims management services for a flat-rated additional premium of $680,000. We also noted 5 annual invoices that Moss received from Hunt Brokerage and Consulting, LLC, in the amount of $100,000 each. And Hunt Building Company has a 40% ownership interest in Moss and Associates, and this is explained in our report in a footnote. And it's not clear what portion of these amounts or transactions were billed to the district. It's not clear whether the services and fees are customary or whether the basis for the amounts charged are rational, fair, and reasonable. Staff are responsible for ensuring the pay applications are complete and accurate prior to approving them for payment. And not requiring contractors to provide sufficient backup documentation increases the risk of billing errors, fraud, going undetected. We have 4 recommendations to address these issues: to strengthen procedures to include the review of sufficient backup documentation that supports the amounts contractors billed for insurance, to ensure pay application review procedures utilized by the district's third-party program manager are accurate and being followed, to add language to the standard contract to address related party transactions and their potential for higher risks, and to remind construction managers of their contractual obligation to provide documentation to the Inspector General in a timely manner and to hold them accountable when they do not. We also recommend that district leadership remind staff of the requirement to provide information to our office in a timely manner. We received a response from management. They assert that the overbillings could not have been reasonably verified at the time of billing. But they do plan for future contracts to require the necessary detail to verify actual costs. And they also plan to contract with a construction auditing firm to perform reviews of construction invoices for larger projects. We have a rebuttal to their response is that internal procedures require support documentation to include invoices. And we also reiterate that the school board expects management to make accurate payments to contractors. We also received a response from the district's third-party program manager. And in summary, it states that they performed all services in accordance with their contractual obligations, and that payment applications were in fact supported with sufficient backup documentation. And their full response is attached to the report in Appendix C. Our second conclusion is that staff has not demonstrated that reimbursing construction managers for their subcontractor default insurance and deductible liability insurance is in the best interest of the district. According to contract terms, if a CM requires subcontractors to provide bonds, the cost of those bonds are to be reimbursed by the district. However, staff have allowed CMs to purchase subcontractor default insurance instead of requiring subcontractors to purchase bonds. This was done without the benefit of a cost-benefit analysis or a feasibility study to determine whether this practice is in the best interest of the district or worth the costs. We have two recommendations to help ensure informed decisions are made. We recommend staff determine whether it is in fact in the district's best interest to require CMs to purchase SDI and deductible liability insurance. And if so, then language should be added to the contracts that establish the specific terms and conditions related to those insurance products. Management responded that they believe using SDI is in the district's best interest and that they will work with the construction auditing firm to assess all options and ensure alignment with industry best practices. We also received a response from one of the construction managers. It basically states that they had discussions with district staff over many years regarding insurance strategies to help understand the benefits of SDI versus bonding. And their full response is also in the report in Appendix B. As part of our testing, we verified if CMs maintained the insurance coverages required by their contracts. For the most part, they did. But staff did not always maintain evidence of that, specifically pollution liability insurance, subcontractor default insurance, and deductible liability insurance. We also learned there were no guidelines to determine when pollution liability insurance should be required on a project or when it may not be worth paying for it. Our recommendations are that procedures should be strengthened to ensure that all certificates of insurance, policies, and endorsements are received, that contract language should state whether pollution liability insurance is required for a project, and guidelines should be established to determine when it is worth paying for pollution liability insurance. Management responded that they have updated their procedures to ensure that all insurance documentation is provided, and that procedures will be added to clarify when pollution insurance may be necessary. Our last conclusion is that one CM utilized an insurance company that was not authorized to conduct business in Florida and also did not meet the minimum AM Best Company rating required by the contract. This was that related party insurance company, Providence Insurance, who provided deductible liability protection to Moss & Associates for 3 of our sample projects. Providence was not listed in the state database and was not rated by AM Best, as was required. So we simply recommend the process be enhanced to ensure all insurers meet the minimum requirements stated in construction contracts. Management responded that they will add this verification to the payment review process. We received a response from Moss & Associates on this, basically saying that Providence was lawfully insuring the deductible risks of Moss & Associates. And it's lengthy, so that's basically what it says, and their full response is attached as an Appendix B in the report. Be happy to take any questions or comments.
Mark?
this might have been out of the scope of the audit, but these insurance providers that were related parties, was it checked to see if they were an actual insurance company in the business of doing insurance, or were these companies just formed to provide insurance just to this contractor?
That's what they do. That's what the captive insurance, well, I'm not going to answer. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what staff did in this case.
Because they should probably look at the insurance company, see if it's actually in the business of doing insurance, instead of just being formed just to provide this one policy to this one contractor, which ends up being a related party that owns part of the contractor. Because then they're most likely violating the rules of forming the insurance company, because you can't form an insurance company just to provide it to one related party.
From our research on this and discussions with staff, it's not an uncommon practice. This does happen in the business.
But they are the only client for that.
But that's pretty common for captive insurance.
Yeah,
I was just
you
saying that's
form
how
a captive
yeah.
insurance because you don't want to pay a third party. You do your own insurance company and you keep the money.
Or a couple companies go into a captive together or something. Yeah, it's
Right.
Frank?
Maybe I'm unfamiliar with the insurance, but it's other insurances. You can't just form an insurance company to insure one client.
It's offshore.
Barbieri?
Yeah, I did check the law on this, and there is an exception that you can have a company that's not in Florida can do business even though they're considered unauthorized in Florida. There's an exception if they only insure one insured and they don't offer any insurance to any other policies. There is an exception under Florida law that allows them to do this, what they did here.
Okay.
Robert, let me ask you a couple questions just chronologically. You were doing a review of one contract, and that one contract came out this for $73,000 or something.
No, we wanted to review a sample of contracts that contained subcontractor default insurance within them. So we sampled six major
So it
construction
was just an audit
contracts.
sample. Something didn't happen with some contract that was reviewed at the department level that caused this to happen for 6 sample. I'm trying to get chronological. I thought I heard in the beginning that there was one company or one contract for $73,000 or
Yeah,
something.
correct. That's what drove this review. That's why we did it.
Okay, so I'm following the chronology. So that happened.
That
So
happened
you
a
said,
couple
well,
years,
this
a couple
happened
years
here.
ago, we reported that, yes.
A couple years ago.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago that happened. And we've waited now to do a sample. When did you start the sample? Not you, but when did we start the sample of 6? How long ago was that?
It was a while ago. It might have been over 2 years ago.
Okay, so the 6 has been working, and now we're coming forward with it? Okay, thanks for that part. Now, I have another question. Who was this program manager that we have in between a construction CM and us? Who is that?
That's a company called AECom.
And what do they do for us?
The contract is staff augmentation. They do what our staff used to do, I guess, and facilities is here. They can help elaborate on that.
Thanks.
Sure. When the referendum was passed 8 years ago, the staffing levels in the construction department were severely depleted, and at the time we engaged this company to help provide support, as Bob had mentioned. And over the years, we've built up our staff to be able to take over some of their duties, but they're still providing us support in administrative services, running a lot of these programs.
Yeah. You defined it as in between. They're not in between us and the contractors. They're a consultant for us. So
They're in a triangle.
They're
Not in between.
Yeah, they're not in between. Correct.
It's a triangle. Excuse me. I'm just trying to understand the construction side of it. So we got this Moss company was mentioned 3 different times in this report for the 3 different issues. Have we done business with them for a long time?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever had a problem with this before? With them? Well, you got insurance, you got overbilling, and what was the third part of it? There was 3 times it was mentioned in this report.
I think one of them was not Moss, if I'm correct.
I don't know.
But
Moss' name is coming up a lot in this review. I just wonder the relationship there, and that's all.
Yeah.
Just asking.
Yes, and the first one that you had mentioned earlier was Moss. That was under a.
That was that $73,000 one?
Was under, yeah.
That
and it
was Moss, that was the one then.
And that was the first one,
Okay.
which led to the evaluation of 6 other.
And as soon as the review was, Robert, as soon as the review was started, 2 years ago during this process, as soon as they knew we were looking at something, they immediately came forward and said, we overbilled you?
This is correct. As soon as we asked for the backup documentation, they came forward and said, oh, we have overbillings of that totaled $177,000
Red
between
light into
two.
somebody's head here. I mean, this is, and these are big numbers. We're not talking about little stuff. Like sometimes we talk about 50,000 or 100,000. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in a sample, that's just the sample. I don't know how many contracts you have. You probably have 40 of them, 50 of them. I don't know.
There aren't that many, because
many?
we want to do more recent contracts, like in the last 5 years, and we want to do large projects.
Right.
So facilities would have a better estimate, but I'd say maybe half would be a good guess of the ones that we qualified for our sample.
Does all this report go into a procedural manual for that department? And that's being done now?
And if I could also mention too, because the Facilities Department works very closely with the Finance Division.
Okay.
And when Mr. Bliss brought forward, the concerns or the observations, opportunities for improvement, we knew that we had to do a better job at the payment review process. And so that was something that I brought to the Audit Committee, I think in one of our responses. I can't remember which audit it was, but that we were going to engage a construction auditing firm to help supplement the Treasury Department, where they'll be doing a complete audit and review of each of the, once the project is complete. And so at that point, you can go through, and the purpose of that is to ensure that they've complied with all the contract requirements and we can have any funds returned. We can also, that's going to be mainly used for large projects, but we're also considering, what size projects and doing the smaller projects as well. Mr. Brolin, who introduced himself in the beginning, he's from Carr Riggs, and he is the firm that we've engaged as part of that payment review process. They have not started because we've recently engaged them. We first asked them to go through and review the construction policies, and then an overview of the whole of construction facilities process from start to finish, because we know as a district that we have not been paying our vendors timely, and that has been a comment by the vendors. And yes, we don't want to change our process just for the vendors, but internally, we take a very long time to pay our invoices, because they do go, even though it doesn't appear they're going through a detailed review process, there is a very detailed review payment process that goes through the Facilities Department. There's a construction oversight review committee that is also reviews change orders and whatnot before it goes to the board. So there's a very detailed and lengthy process. So before we made changes to those policies, we asked Carr Riggs if they would look at the proposed changes, because we wanted to make sure those changes would align with industry standard. And then from there, we'll expand their review to looking at our contracts, how we can strengthen the language within our contracts to ensure we have all the appropriate supporting documentation. And so we have taken steps. We've engaged the firm, and so we'll be able to ensure to be able to look back at contracts that have already, or projects that have already closed, and use this process going forward.
Managing cash flow during the process of the project, which sometimes I would think could go 2 months, 2 years, I don't know. You're advancing funds. You're just advancing funds. This audit will only be that much later, so you're advancing funds now. Your auditing suggestion, I got it. That's great. That'll tune it up at the back end, like we have for a financial report that our auditors do for the school district. But for cash flow purposes, I would think you'd have to bring this back down the line in this department and really install procedures that are going to be adhered to before the bill goes to somewhere through the process to get paid.
And that is part of the whole comprehensive review process.
That'll come back down
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
yeah, it's a
got it.
comprehensive.
Got it.
What is
Okay.
going on from the time it's paid all the way through the process.
Okay.
But
thank
we
you.
are making contract language changes as well. In work with Mr. Bliss actually helped us see the light and see the opportunity to make those changes not only to policies, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but in addition, as you say, as you're pointing out, in contract language, so they see it up front and it's administered in our operational procedures all the way through the construction contract, so that when all willing that we get to the CRI review, that hopefully there's far less to worry about. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Mr.
Frank?
Chair, there are some things in, from a staffing perspective, I would like to just try to get a little understanding on. It's throughout the document, throughout the report, it states staff did not, staff is doing. Are we looking, are some of those staff internal things that staff was doing, was not doing, are they also being addressed through this process? Because just looking at the very first page, staff do not adequately verify accuracy of amounts. So that has very little to do with the outside, the other companies or the consultants.
Well,
That's internal.
I would disagree with that because our contract language does have to be detailed enough to ensure that we're getting the proper documentation. And so we're going to utilize CRI to ensure that to review our contracts, to ensure the contract language includes everything necessary, and that also aligns with industry standard to make it easier to go through the whole process review of ensuring that it's the accurate amount. You know, for example, SDI. I've been finding out so much more than I ever wanted to know. I am not an expert, right? So that is why I consulted with RSM construction auditors and CRI construction auditors, not specifically as to what our district is doing, but based on their experience in the industry, they are experts. What do you see when you go out to clients and you do these audits? And they would say that when they go out and do these audits for the first times, a lot of times the documentation isn't detailed enough because their contracts aren't written in the right way. Or not that they're not written in the right way, they could be enhanced. And, you know, contractors are just like anybody else. If they can find a loophole, they're gonna find a loophole. So when they find a loophole, then you need to make sure, you need to make sure that you tie it up the next time that you do a contract with them. And so by using a firm that's what they're doing on a daily basis, we'll be able to leverage their expertise so that we stay on top of those loopholes and making those changes current within our contract to ensure we're getting all of the supporting documentation that's needed.
Understood.
And oh, sorry.
And before you call them, I want to support the staff and the way the report is written, and it doesn't sound like it's all of the staff. It's more of the consultants and some of the construction managers that are supplying deficient information, and not just staff internally, unless this staff is not.
Well, I would say there were some things that were missed in the payment review process. 100%. I would say when you look at the payment, the reviews, the contractor payments that come in, they're what, 200 pages? I mean, it's so much supporting documentation that's submitted. You know, staff they truly do an outstanding job. If they were just paying based on when the invoice was submitted, we wouldn't have any problems and delays in paying our vendors. But it honestly is, I would say, a 2-month process almost to go through and verify with the architect, making sure the status of, you know, the percent complete is accurate based on what the contractor is submitting. So there is I don't want that to get lost here. There's a very detailed review process. There are just certain things where I would say maybe we didn't have the expertise on and we missed internally.
Okay, 2 more questions. Frank?
Yeah, I've got a couple comments, but before, I just want to say that Moss is an excellent construction company. I'm not going to justify some of the problems here, other than to say that they built 3 schools in District 5 and did a tremendously good job of building those structures and did a great job of finishing those schools. I do have some concerns. First of all, and I understand, Ms. Fredericks, that it's a ton of stuff that comes in, but one of my major concerns when I was on the board as well is the interaction between departments and the Inspector General's office. The report says that 8 written requests over 6 months were needed before staff provided partial documentation. That's a policy violation of School Board Policy 1.092. You have 10 days to provide it. I hope that in the future, I tried getting this done while I was a school board member. Obviously, it's not working because it took them 6 months to get the documentation over to the Inspector General's office. I think the purpose of putting the Inspector General in place is so that the Inspector General's office can promptly get documentation to make sure that issues that can be seen when they review the documents are fixed before the contract goes on for months and months and months. So hopefully you can fix that in the future and work towards.
If I could speak to that, because I take that comment to heart, because I am an auditor at heart, I would say, and I do my best to provide information as timely as possible. And I always work with the IG's office if there's something where, just due to timing and workload, we're not able to get with that. We've always been able to work together to provide delays. With that one, that was an extremely extended period of time. I do believe that did relate to my department, and it was truly just a misunderstanding. The information was provided to one of my staff members, and it happened to be in a hallway, and she just forgot that she had it. It was as simple as that. And when we found out that it was the delay, we had to then go back to the contractor to say we had to request the information again. And it was purely a misunderstanding, and it was not intended to withhold information in any way.
Okay, your office has always done a great job, so I understand mistakes can be made. The other one is the violation of policy 7.229. Contractors' payments were made without accurate and complete supporting data. I guess my concern is more with AECOM. Mr. Sanchez, why aren't they required to make sure? I mean, I can hand somebody an invoice and say, this should be paid, and shouldn't AECOM be looking at making sure that whatever the invoice is for, that the work was completed, rather than just say, it's okay, go ahead and pay this invoice? I mean, what is the purpose of having them there if they're not going to at least check to make sure that if an invoice is submitted, the work for that invoice covers was actually provided to the district?
It's not just AECOM. That review starts with the architect, with our project managers, and actually AECOM's involvement in our pay application process has diminished over the last couple of years, as Mr. Dolan has said. We've hired on staff that now we're taking over that responsibility even more so ourselves. But yeah, I don't think anybody has questioned whether percent complete, but that is accurate, because it's reviewed 3 times or so before it comes to me. And I don't see all the pay applications, but I get a number of them, especially the ones that reduce retention on it. And I can tell you that I see them marked up to the penny about, you build this for X amount of dollars, and we marked it up and we changed it to this amount. So I know that it's a very detailed review. So, I can't speak to individual pay applications, but I can tell you that on an overall basis, they're very detailed reviews by at least 3 different people looking at the.
No, I understand, Mr. Sanchez. I'm not casting, at your department. I'm saying, why are we paying AECOM if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing? And are they required to verify that work was done before they say, yeah, go ahead and pay this invoice? I understand you guys are looking at all this stuff, but why are we paying them an override on contracts if they're not at least verifying that the work is done before an invoice is authorized to be paid? What are we paying them for with respect to that issue?
Exactly. Well, they're no longer doing that process for us.
Okay.
Our internal people are doing the pay application reviews.
Okay.
They do supplement our staff with some project managers and some other things in reporting, but our project managers are doing that part.
Okay, and I guess my other concerns are that the contract, the school board has put provisions in for how these contracts are supposed to be structured. In Contract Article 8, the insurer was not authorized as an AM Best. That, whether they're authorized to do business and set up this captive company is totally a separate issue from the fact that the contract that has been approved by the school board with respect to what provisions are supposed to be in it, there was a violation of that, and nobody caught that. I don't know if that was legal, or I don't know where the issue is, but I'm hoping somebody is checking to make sure that the contract that's been approved by the board, that those provisions are being followed with respect to insurance. It also, contract Article 24 it was not followed. Another contract provision that was approved by the board, invoices lack detail required for pre-post audit review. So I'm just kind of surprised that a contract of this magnitude can be issued by the district and certain provisions that are very important to protecting the district are not being followed. So I understand that you're reviewing all this and you're going to try and fix it, but I guess my core question is, over all of this, is why are we paying for SDI or a private bond, a bond between the contractor and the subcontractor? It's not a good use of public funds for us to do that. That's a risk that the contractor's taking. Whether they choose to get a bond and pay the bond and go through the procedures when there's a problem, and I know it takes months when you have a bond as opposed to private insurance, but why are we paying that? Let them build that into their bids with all the other contractors rather than giving them an extra pot of money. So we approve them, the board approves a contract for X million dollars, and now we have to pay them extra so they can get insurance to protect themselves against their own subcontractors. I don't understand what the benefit is to the district of doing that. Just tell them to work this into your bid, give us a bid that includes all of what you want in there, and let's compare you to all the other contractors that are out there. And if you want to get insurance to protect yourself against your subs, or you want to get surety bonds, then do that. But it has nothing to do with us because it doesn't help us a bit. We have a bond between the contractor and the district. If they default, that bond's going to kick in. Whether they have a problem going out and finding a subcontractor is no business of ours. They have the obligation to get a sub, whether they have insurance or a bond to get the sub. It's their obligation to get it, and if they don't, then they violate it. Then we have a bond that protects the district. So tell me why we would consider continuing to do this. I understand it's industry standard. I understand that our outside auditors say other people do it, but what is the benefit to the Palm Beach County School District and the taxpayers to providing money for the contractor to insure itself against its own subcontractors? I don't understand what the benefit is to the district.
The main benefit, because ultimately I did originally have the opinion that you have. Why are we paying for that? And I know the county, for example, I believe Ms. Bolton is in the audience, the county chooses to not pay for SDI. That is why I had to research and consult with experts to say, you know, why would we want SDI? Why do we need SDI? What is industry standard? Because I do want to make sure that our district is aligning with industry standard. And ultimately, it is to the benefit of the district that we stay on time. Because if a subcontractor does default, it takes time for the contractor in order to go through the bond, exercise, and do whatever they have to do to pull out funds. Going through the SDI process is a much quicker process, and it provides more certainty that the project is going to stay on time. And it's very important for us over any other entity, I would say, to stay on time, because when a school needs to open for the first day of school, the school needs to open the first day of school. We can't open a week later, you know, so that is the main benefit that I see for a district, and why it's important, and why I'm continuing to still recommend that we require that they have SDI. And we're working on this still internally. We're still having internal conversations. And that's why I want to make sure to bring in CRI into those discussions as well. And maybe SDI isn't best for all projects. You know, maybe it's only certain projects, not the smaller projects. So we're working through all those discussions internally, but based on my initial thoughts based on consulting with those who have experience in the industry, it is ultimately best for the district, because it is going to keep that is our best guarantee that is going to keep the projects on time.
Okay, so let me give you a follow-up. When we lease out an auditorium, we require that the lessee has insurance.
Mm-hmm.
We don't pay for that. That's one of their requirements. You need to protect the district. You need to buy insurance. We make sure they bought the insurance before they get the lease. So I don't understand why we don't say to the contractor, we want you to have this SDI. We want you to have this because it's in the best interest of the district, that if there's one of your subs walks out, that we have somebody immediately going to pay to get somebody in there. I get that. Why are we paying for that? Why don't we say to the contractor, we want you to have this insurance, just like we tell every other contractor that we contract with, that you have to have this insurance or that insurance or whatever. I'm sure the company that transports our kids they must have insurance that protects the district in case they have an accident. Do we pay for that insurance? No, it's built into their rate. So why are we taking on the responsibility rather than just saying, this is a required insurance that we require contractors to have. You guys need to give us proof that you bought it. Why aren't we doing it that way? Why are we paying it? In addition, if this was part of the contract, it'd be one thing, but I understand that the bid is given, we give a dollar amount, we accept the bid, and then we have to pay them extra when they buy this insurance. We give them more money. Why? Why don't we just say, it's your requirement to provide us, certificate of insurance showing that you're going to insure the district?
We're going to pay for it regardless one way or the other.
No,
Even if,
but
yeah, so even if we do it that way, I would rather know exactly what it's going to be, and I would rather have some sort of defined metric and cost and way to determine what that is that we're paying for and what it is. And so that's why the response that we have, because, the response came from me, but it was really collaborative. And then we're still working internally. I mean, that is my honest response back, is that we are still working internally. We've engaged Carr Riggs in order to help, because there is a disagreement between right now between the finance department and facilities as to how to best approach SDI. So that's why I don't have a response in here saying this is exactly what we're going to do, because we haven't yet determined it.
Okay, so I'll give you
I
that.
can take your opinion back, though.
Okay, that's all I'm asking, is just take it back, and just like we do with every other insurance company. I get it, you want to see exactly what it is. So here's what we want to see in the insurance policy that you proved us that you bought to protect the district. Here's all the things that the finance department and the building department want to see in the insurance. I don't understand why we just don't do that and say, just work it into your bid, whatever it comes to, we don't even care. We just want to see the output of what exactly we're getting coverage for, so that we have authority to make, we know that we're covered on this situation. I just don't understand why, and we've carved out that particular type of insurance and saying, we're going to pay for that, even though every other contractor that deals with the district pays for their own insurance and gives us proof of insurance. So just take my comment back, if you would, and discuss.
Okay, I'm going to entertain one more question, and then we need to move on. There's a gentleman online by the name of Rob. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, hello. I just, I wanted to kind of, it goes back to a comment about our services coming at the end, and wanted to ensure what things are being done during the payment application process. In particular, the topic at the time was dealing with SDI and general liability insurance. So just to address that, Heather did say we do the contract review, which is up front. It helps get the language right, gets all that's needed in order to do the pay app review real time. But another aspect that wasn't mentioned that was part of what we do is we do a pre-verification. So you're not waiting at the end to figure out, did they do the insurance correctly or not? It's just one example. We do other pre-verification of what we consider to be higher risk items that you don't want to wait, or maybe they're more difficult or complicated to try to verify during the pay app review process. One of those things, as has been pointed out, is the insurance. And so we typically do that as part of that process. So it's pre-verified. So you know and determine at the beginning with the contractor, this is what we're agreeing to, that's going to be what's valid in terms of the cost for SDI or general liability. So that's a pre-verification. That's just one example. And then we do our closeout at the end. And just one other comment is we also do a lot of pay app reviews. We know you have your own internal process and department that does that, but we're available to, on a consultative basis, if there's support needed in that regard. We can also, as part of that engagement with you guys, help with that as well, as needed, to provide that support.
Okay, thank you. We need to move on. Do I entertain a motion to approve this review?
I'll motion to approve.
Second? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, Bob, go on to the recommendations and implementation status report, please.
Okay, this you see every quarter. There's the good news on this report is there's only 2 items of outstanding audit recommendations that have not been completed yet, which is the fewest amount that I think we've ever had. So congratulations to staff. The bad news is, these have been ongoing for quite a while, but staff is working on them. One is expected to be completed by the end of this year, and the second one has been pushed back to June 2026.
Well, they both relate to the implementation of ServiceNow. So we're phasing in several different modules. So we've already started, I would say, 6 months ago with the implementation of ServiceNow. It's just these were not considered a priority, and they were pushed back further in the implementation process. So.
General question, ServiceNow, I'm a little familiar with that software system. I guess it's a software system.
Mm-hmm.
Is that being implemented throughout the district or just in here?
It's being implemented, it's going to be implemented for our call centers. We're also using it for our inventory tracking, for our tracking of what we call our bugs within the system. When we say, okay, we want to see this change within the software, tracking the status of those.
Okay,
So
thank
that
you.
type of
Thank
aspect.
you.
So it's somewhat because it is including the call center piece of it.
Any further questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, next we'll move to item 8, overview of construction management policy changes.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this as quick as possible since we're already towards the end of the meeting. And I think we already discussed actually a lot of information related to the construction project, construction policies. But as I've already stated, the facilities department has been working very closely with the finance division as well as legal. So within the finance division, the treasury department, as well as procurement. And we've been working, facilities started over a year ago to try to improve their current process. And as part of that process, it's also updating and aligning their policies. And so there are, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies that are going up for review. Normally, we wouldn't present these policies to the audit committee. They've already been presented to CORC, which is the Construction Oversight Review Committee. Board Member Branch is also a representative on the CORC committee. And these policies were presented to the CORC committee last week. And I just wanted to bring it more for informational purposes, just because the audit department, Mr. Bliss, sits on the CORC committee, or I don't know if you officially sit on the CORC committee, but you attend all of the meetings. So I thought it was important for the audit committee to understand that there are going to be some revisions to the policies. The reason for the revisions is to streamline our current process and then also align it with changes within the Florida statute. And the only ones I really wanted to mention was the changes within the change order process, because from the Florida statute, the facilities had already gone through the review of all their policies, and then last year in the legislative session, there was a change to the change order process saying that the change orders had to be completed, reviewed, paid within 35 days after that change order being submitted to the district. Our process right now, it goes through, a change order would go through the CORC committee, then get presented to the board. It could take up to 70 days for a change order to be processed. And so there was no way for us to comply with that change in statute without changing our current delegated authority. So that is the reason. So our current delegated authority was $100,000. We have now increased it to $200,000 per incident. We asked Carr Riggs if they could assist us with reviewing that policy and what is industry standard now across the state, since this is a change in Florida statute. We are one of the first districts to tackle the change, so we are being much more conservative than probably the facilities department would like to be. And there is a possibility that we will not be able to comply with that 35-day requirement from statute. And if that is the case, we may have to go back and change and update this policy again. But our recommendation is increasing the limit from $100,000 to $200,000 per individual item. And then for the cumulative, it would be $500,000 or $1 million, depending on the size of the contract. That is the one place where we defer slightly from what Carr Riggs recommended. They recommended $200,000 per individual item and then $200,000 or 10% as a cumulative amount. Facilities was concerned that 10% was too high of a number, because if you have a large contract, that could be
Sure.
10, 15 million dollars, a lot of money. And so that's why they felt more comfortable with a flat amount. So I just wanted to make sure to mention, we did run that by Carr Riggs. They were okay with the district's position. They understood the district's position. They're still keeping their recommendation, but they do feel that, you know, it's, I would say, and Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they think it's acceptable, at least. And then we'll continue to monitor and make sure if we're not able to comply with that 35 days, we may have to come back potentially with some changes later on. But we wanted to keep it conservative, not go with a $2 million limit or $1 million limit. We wanted to keep it low and know that we may have to come back to you. The only other item that I wanted to mention was where the use of the contractor contingency. So when there's a project that goes to the board with a contract agreement, there's a contingency that's built in specifically for the contractor for items that would just be missed, you know, that, and right now it's required that those change orders would go back through and the use of contingency would go back through court committee. In speaking with CRI, since it's already been approved by the board, there's no reason to go back to the board because the contingency has already, the contractor contingency has already been approved as part of the contract. Court recommended that they would prefer to continue to see those. We recommend that we're still going to provide it, but we'll provide it at the end of the project, I believe. So those were the two items that I really wanted to highlight, and Mr. Dolan can correct me if there's anything.
That is accurate, yes.
Okay, before we go any further, it's my understanding that since we've exceeded our time, I need a motion to extend the meeting until we complete, which should be within 5 minutes. Is there a motion?
Since I did it, I guess I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? We have a second? Yeah. Okay, discussion, all in favor, all opposed, passes 7-0. Okay, any questions of Heather?
Yeah, so any questions?
Okay, if not.
That's Mr. Chair, I do have one, something that you just stated at the very end. You said that the contingency will come back to the court at the end of the project. They didn't want to see it ongoing if there was just, they wanted it at the end only?
Yeah, well, this is not precluding staff from reviewing each contingency item as they come through. So staff will see everyone as it happens. The contractor will submit them to staff. Staff will have to evaluate them for the thoroughness, for the accuracy, for compliance with the policy, for contingency policy, and then allow them to continue on through because they're already in the contract. We were ultimately going to compile it all at the end for the Construction Oversight Committee to be able to review that one, the compilation at the end of the project only.
Okay, of all the contingencies.
Just for contingency, yes. Change orders will be, the different policy, the change orders will be presented on a review basis every month to the Oversight Committee.
All right, thank you.
So I'm picking up on his question. Why can't you, on your monthly court meetings, show them the contingency that have already been done so that they're not waiting 2 years till a contract's finished to see all the contingency payments that were made? Can't you just give them, since you're reviewing them anyway, can't you just include them as a monthly report to court?
It's a matter of the order of magnitude.
Okay.
The number of contingencies that occur every month is immense compared to the number of change orders. In all honesty, we've suggested we're taking maybe 10 change orders a month, that kind of thing, or even less. Contingencies, we're taking at least 40, 50 a month, and keeping up with those on a reporting basis was more challenging, and we're still sticking with we want to give that level of comfort that staff is reviewing them. It's not like they're just, contractor gets to take the money and use it how he chooses. He still has to submit each month, every contingency used to us.
Thank you.
Okay, next is investigations. These were all sent to you previously by Joyce. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 21st. Is there any further business or comments to come before the committee? If not, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Pass unanimously, 7-0. Thank you all for your patience and your participation.
All righty.